Buying your first home is not as complicated as it seems. So, if the thought of it feels a little overwhelming or stressful, by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what you're in for and feel a lot more excited about the journey. There will be 5 parts to this series, and this will be the first video where I break down all the costs and benefits of homeownership so you can decide for yourself whether or not you want to buy your first home. My name is Michael Manassian, and I've worked at some of the top real estate brokerages in the world. But today I operate my own brokerage, Maximus Properties, where I get to support people in navigating the world of real estate every single day. So let's get into it. I've broken down the cost of homeownership into 3 categories: your upfront costs, your monthly reoccurring costs, and your long-term costs. So let's start with the upfront costs. And to get into that, it's important to note that as of today, the median home price in LA is about $955,000. And so most of us don't have $1 million just sitting around ready to go. So the way we purchase a property is with a home loan. Now, when we do that, there's 2 major components: the down payment and the loan. And so the down payment is a portion of the property's purchase price that we pay upfront. And with that, and with a loan, we're able to make up that $1 million and buy the property that we want. And so the first upfront cost is the down payment. A down payment can range anywhere from 0 to 100%. But typically in Southern California, a down payment is about 10 to 20% of the purchase price. So, for example, on $1 million property with, let's say, 15% down, that's going to be $150,000 you're going to need for your down payment. Of course, you can go less, you can go more. The trade-off is that the more money you put down, the less money you'll have to pay on your monthly mortgage payment. The next upfront cost you'll have when you buy a property is your closing costs. Now, in a simple transaction, there are so many people involved. So closing costs take care of your title fees, your escrow fees, your loan origination fees, your appraisal fees, your credit report fees, and a bunch of other stuff that sounds really expensive. It's not really important to know right now, but just know that in Southern California, you're going to pay about 1% of the purchase price in closing costs. The next upfront cost is going to be the cost of inspections. And what this means is when you're in escrow to purchase a property, there's generally a period of time where you're allowed to conduct inspections on the property to really investigate and know what you're buying. And so inspections cost money. A general home inspection can cost anywhere from a few $100 up to and over $1,000. And so you may also need specific inspections, such as a sewer inspection or a foundation inspection or any other type of inspection. And so to be conservative, we're going to account for $2,000 in home inspections. And so with the down payment, the closing costs, and the inspections, we're expecting about $162,000 in upfront costs for this $1 million property. And so the only fee that I'm not mentioning is what you pay your agent. And the reason I'm not mentioning it is because there's ways of structuring your deal so that you don't have to pay your agent upfront. And better yet, you may not have to pay your agent at all because the seller might pay for your agent's fees. And this is a really interesting topic that we'll dive deep into in the agency relationship video. But most deals are going to be structured that way, where you don't have to pay your agent upfront. So we're only going to account for down payment, closing costs, and inspections as the upfront costs. Now let's get into the reoccurring costs. The first reoccurring cost is going to be the monthly mortgage payment. And the mortgage payment is made up of 2 components: the principal and the interest. The principal is the actual money that's borrowed. So for this instance, with a $1 million property, because we put down $150,000, we owe $850,000. And so that's the principal amount. The interest is the cost of borrowing that money. And today's interest rate is somewhere around 6.5%, which means every year we're going to pay 6.5% of our principal loan amount in interest payments. And so as time goes on and we pay off the principal loan amount, we're going to be paying less and less interest because we owe less money. So in this example, with $1 million property with $150,000 down at an interest rate of 6.5%, we can assume that our principal and interest is going to be somewhere around $5,400 a month. Now, it's important to note, just because our mortgage today is at a 6.5% interest rate doesn't mean it'll be 6.5% for the entirety of the loan. The interest rate fluctuates with the economy. So when the interest rate comes down, we have the option to refinance the property, which means we can go get a new loan at a lower interest rate, which will pay off and replace the existing loan on the property. And so, for example, with a 6.5% interest rate, our principal and interest payment is about $5,400 a month. At a 4.5 interest rate, the principal and interest payment would be about $4,300 a month. And so today's interest rate is somewhere around 6.5%. So that's the number we're going to use. But keep in mind, you can refinance as the interest rate fluctuates. The next recurring cost is going to be the tax bill. And in LA County, the tax rate is approximately 1.25% of the purchase price. And so on $1 million property, 1.25% is $12,500. And that's what you'll pay every year in taxes. However, this will be paid biannually every 6 months. So in this scenario, it would be broken down into 2 payments of $6,250. The next recurring cost is going to be the insurance. Now, because the lender has money invested in this property, they're going to require that this property is insured and that their money is protected. Now, in 2024, homeowners insurance in California has become a major problem. The prices have gone up 4 to 5 times what they used to be. Last year, according to bankrate.com, the average for homeowners insurance in California was about $154 on a monthly basis. Now, there isn't any information as far as what the average is today because this is an ongoing problem, but we're going to assume and calculate about $500 on a monthly basis for homeowners insurance. However, the homeowners insurance, much like the tax rate, is charged on a biannual basis. So you'll pay every 6 months for your homeowners insurance. Now, it's important to note, when you first purchase the property, the insurance company may require you to purchase 6 months, even up to a year's worth of insurance up front. So add that to the upfront costs. Additionally, if you're putting less than 20% down on the property, your lender may require you to purchase private mortgage insurance, or PMI. And private mortgage insurance on $1 million property can cost somewhere around $430 a month. I calculated this using a simple mortgage calculator app I have on my phone. And you can see here that I can plug in the purchase price, the down payment, the tax rate, and the interest rate. And so it's pretty cool to mess with these numbers and see what we come up with. And if I click on more details, I can even see the total principal and interest payments for the year. And I can even break it down to show what the mortgage payment is in terms of principal and interest, or just taxes, or just the insurance. So I would definitely recommend downloading one of these apps and messing around with it to get a better understanding of what these numbers can look like. The next monthly reoccurring payment that we may incur is an HOA payment. An HOA stands for Homeowners Association. The reason we may have a homeowners association payment is because some properties lie in these homeowners association communities, and you pay them every single month to take care of things like maintenance of the common areas or amenities or other services like landscaping, security, or whatever else they may offer. Pretty much all condos, townhomes, and some tract homes are in HOA communities. Homes, however, in Los Angeles almost are never in HOA communities. It's very rare to find a home in a HOA community. So for our example of the $1 million property, we're going to assume that it's not in a HOA community because most houses in LA are not. The next monthly recurring cost is going to be the utility bill. And utilities includes electricity, gas, water, sewer, trash, and cable and internet. And so, according to a study done by KTLA 5 News, the average utility bill in LA was about $455 compared to the national average of $351. Now, with all of these costs considered, even though some of them are paid on a biannually basis, if we broke it down on a monthly basis, the total cost is about $7,826 a month. Okay, now for the long term costs. The long term cost of homeownership is the maintenance. And the things that require the maintenance are the things like the roof, the HVAC system, any electrical issues, any plumbing issues, landscaping, pest control, things like that. So, a general rule of thumb is to set aside 1% of your home's price for annual maintenance. Now, that's assuming you hire professionals to take care of the work for you. Of course, you can bust out the toolbox and take care of some of these things yourself. Something to note is that older homes generally will require more maintenance than newer homes, and condos and townhomes will generally require less maintenance than regular homes. So, with all of the monthly costs as well as the long term costs considered, that brings us to a yearly total of about $103,000 in homeownership costs, which is aside from the upfront costs. And that's pretty much all of it. So, now let's move on to the benefits. Now, before we get into the benefits, there's a term I want to define, and that term is equity. And as it relates to real estate, equity means the value of the property minus any loans or liabilities. And so on this $1 million property, because there's a loan of $850,000, that means there's $150,000 in equity. Now, equity is still just money. You can have $150,000 in cash sitting in the bank, $150,000 worth of gold, or $150,000 in the house. And so if you were to sell that property after paying off the loan, you'd recoup that $150,000 in cash. So that's what equity means. And when I say the down payment is a cost, I want to clear that up because a cost kind of makes it seem like you're spending that money and not getting it back. The down payment is just simply putting your money from the bank into the property. It's your equity. So there are a ton of financial benefits to owning a home, but there are also a lot of psychological benefits. First, the sense of pride and achievement of owning your own home. You also have a sense of security in owning your own home. You're also not subject to a landlord. You're not subject to rent increases. And you have something that you can leave off to your family. Now, that's enough of this mushy stuff. Let's get into the financial benefits. So now that we got that out of the way, the first financial benefit of homeownership is the use of leverage. And as it relates to real estate, leverage means using a small amount of money to control a much larger asset. And so in this situation, we only put down $150,000, but now we own and control $1 million asset. And so if we were to rehab the property or add value in any way, we're adding value to $1 million, not just $150,000. Also, as the property appreciates in value, we're appreciating on $1 million, not just $150,000. And so in a few years, when that property is worth $1.2 million, even though we don't fully own it, that extra $200,000 is now our equity. Which brings me to the next benefit of homeownership, appreciation. Now, historically, over a long period of time, home values have only gone up. And in LA County, home prices can be volatile if you look at smaller periods of time. For example, if we look at the year 1990 to the year 2000, we would have lost about 7% on our home value. However, if we looked at the year 1996 to the year 2006, we would have experienced a gain of about 216% on the home value. So, home prices can be volatile over a short period of time, but on average in LA County, over a period of about 30 years, home prices have appreciated at a compounded rate of about 5 to 6%, which can lead to really long-term significant gains. Before we get into all the other benefits, if we simply look at the cost of owning this home over 30 years, considering the effects of inflation, the total cost of homeownership would be just over $3.3 million. However, at the end of 30 years, we would now own this asset, which, because of the effects of appreciation, is now worth just over $4.3 million. And so, not considering any of the other benefits, and not even counting for the fact that we may be able to refinance, which would bring down the cost of homeownership, we're already in the green here, over $1 million. This is not even considering any of the other benefits. So just off the appreciation alone, we can see here that the benefits truly do outweigh the costs. So now let's get into the next benefit. The next benefit of homeownership is the fact that your house doubles as a savings account. So over time, as you pay off your mortgage and you pay off your principal loan amount, and the property appreciates in value, you're building more and more equity. Now, if you ever want to remodel the property or start a business, or God forbid you have an emergency where you need a lot of money, that money is there and you can borrow most of it to do whatever you want with. Which leads me to the next benefit, the tax benefits of homeownership. As time goes on and the value of this property appreciates beyond what we paid for it, that new money is called the capital gain. And so the first benefit is that we don't have to pay taxes on that capital gain until we sell the property. Which brings me to the next benefit. If we've lived in the property for 2 out of the last 5 years, we get a $250,000 capital gains tax exemption and a $500,000 exemption per married couple. And so in a few years, when that property is worth $1.5 million, if you're married and you meet the requirements for the exemption, you don't have to pay taxes on that $500,000 you just made. The final tax benefit is the fact that for the first $750,000 of your mortgage debt, you can write off the interest you pay on that loan. And so on this particular $1 million property, that means for approximately 28 years, you'll save about $20,000 a year in tax savings. Now, I will say I'm not a tax professional, so I would double check all this information with your accountant. The final benefit of homeownership is that we're able to beat inflation. If we had $100,000 sitting in the bank, we lose money over time because as the years go by, that $100,000 becomes less and less valuable because of the effects of inflation. The inflation rate right now is said to be about 3%, which, if you ask me, it's way more than that, but that's besides the point. Every year, as time goes on, we're able to buy less and less with the dollar because the purchasing power of the dollar goes down. So over time, that $100,000 we have sitting in the bank becomes less and less valuable. And this is why we need to have our money working for us, not even to make a profit, but just so we don't get swallowed up by inflation. Owning real estate allows us to beat inflation in 2 ways. The first is with appreciation. We know over a long period of time, homes in Southern California appreciate about 5 to 6% a year. And so not only are we keeping up with inflation, but we're outpacing it. But this isn't anything special because most investments keep up with inflation. Now, secondly, because the rate of inflation is 3% every year, as the cost of goods and services rise, the purchasing power of the dollar decreases by 3% every year. Meaning, if we have $1,000 today, next year that $1,000 will feel like $970. And the year after that, it'll feel like $941. And 5 years down the line, that $1,000 will feel like $885 because the purchasing power of that money will have decreased. And so for this example, to keep things simple, let's assume we don't refinance or change the mortgage at all. Because the purchasing power of the dollar decreases by 3% every year, our mortgage payment of $5,400 in 15 years from now will feel like $3,420 does today. And so this is awesome because we only put down $150,000. And even though we don't fully own the property for another 30 years, we get to start appreciating on the total amount of $1 million today and pay off the loan with cheaper dollars. And so 30 years from now, we've been appreciating at about 6% every year, while the money we've been paying the mortgage company back with has been losing value at about 3% a year. This spread is where real wealth is built. So now you know all the costs and benefits of homeownership. And I know that was a lot of information at once, but ultimately, if you're asking yourself, should you buy your first home? I think the simple answer is if you can afford those payments, then yes, because it's clear to see that just off the appreciation alone, every single dollar you put in, you'll get back and then some. And so now the question is, what should I buy? And I'll cover that in the next video. So if you got any value from this video at all, click here to join my free school community for first-time homebuyers in Southern California, where I'm going to be making a lot more videos and resources just like this to make the journey of buying your first home as exciting as possible. And I'll see you in the next one.